So Saudi Arabia just did something brutal to Iran. Now Hormuz is wide open. Saudi Arabia had carefully cultivated diplomatic relations with Iran for over 2 years, signing agreements and hosting delegations in Riyadh. However, on March 15, 2026, Saudi Arabia severed every military cooperation channel with Tehran and simultaneously announced a massive naval deployment to the Strait of Hormuz that threatens to shatter Iran's strategic chokehold over global energy supplies. The kingdom dispatched 12 advanced warships, including 4 French-built frigates and 8 American-supplied patrol vessels, to positions just outside Iranian territorial waters. This maneuver represents not merely a naval exercise, but the systematic dismantling of Iran's most powerful geopolitical weapon. The strait carries approximately 20 million barrels of oil per day, representing nearly 30% of all seaborne traded petroleum. Saudi Arabia just declared that this lifeline will no longer be held hostage by Tehran's threats. The images you are about to see on your screens will reveal how the balance of power in the Persian Gulf is being fundamentally rewritten. What you see is not just ships repositioning, but the end of Iran's ability to threaten global energy markets. The footage shows Saudi naval vessels establishing what military analysts are calling a steel corridor through the narrowest point of the strait. But that is not the most shocking detail. There are 3 critical factors that enabled this dramatic Saudi move. The first is the unprecedented military modernization program that Riyadh completed in silence over 18 months. The second is a secret intelligence sharing agreement with Israel that provided real-time Iranian naval movement data. The third is China's shocking decision to guarantee alternative oil routes through Pakistan, eliminating Beijing's dependence on Hormuz Passage. We will explain these factors in the later parts of this video. Now we must look at how this confrontation began. On March 12, 2026, Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps naval units conducted aggressive maneuvers near Saudi oil infrastructure in the northern Gulf. According to reports from the Institute for the Study of War, Iranian fast attack craft approached within 8 nautical miles of Saudi offshore platforms, the closest such incursion in over 3 years. Saudi radar systems tracked 17 Iranian vessels, including 3 Ghadir-class midget submarines designed specifically for Gulf operations. The Iranian flotilla remained in the area for 6 hours, conducting what Tehran described as routine exercises. Saudi military intelligence assessed the situation differently. According to classified reports later confirmed by German intelligence services, the Iranian vessels were conducting targeting practice using the exact coordinates of Saudi oil facilities. The message was clear and brutal. Iran wanted Riyadh to understand that Saudi energy infrastructure remained vulnerable to immediate destruction should the kingdom step out of line. Saudi Arabia's response came not in rhetoric, but in systematic military deployment. Within 72 hours of the Iranian maneuvers, the Royal Saudi Navy activated its most advanced assets. The fleet included 4 Al-Riyadh-class frigates equipped with Aster-15 surface-to-air missiles capable of intercepting Iranian cruise missiles and drones. These French-designed vessels represent the most sophisticated air defense platforms operating in Gulf waters. Each frigate carries a helicopter for extended surveillance and anti-submarine warfare capabilities. Accompanying the frigates were 8 Safat-class patrol boats mounting Harpoon anti-ship missiles with ranges exceeding 120 kilometers. These American-supplied vessels provide the kingdom with credible ship-killing capability against Iran's larger corvettes and frigates. The deployment positioned Saudi naval power at choke points Iran previously dominated unchallenged. But the truly revolutionary element was not the ships themselves, but the command and control architecture coordinating their movements. Saudi Arabia had quietly installed an integrated air and maritime defense network connecting ground-based radar installations, airborne early warning aircraft, and naval vessels into a unified targeting picture. The system, based on NATO's Link 16 data sharing protocol, provides real-time threat assessment and automated engagement recommendations. According to Defense Ministry announcements, the network can track over 1,000 aerial and surface contacts simultaneously while coordinating responses from land, sea, and air assets. This represents a quantum leap in Saudi military capability. Iran's previous advantage rested on asymmetric tactics using swarms of fast attack craft and coastal missile batteries to overwhelm individual targets. The integrated network negates that advantage by allowing Saudi forces to engage multiple threats simultaneously with coordinated fires. The technical specifications are staggering. The The system processes data from 47 radar sites, 12 airborne platforms, and 38 naval vessels, creating a defensive umbrella that transforms the northern Gulf from Iranian Lake into contested battle space. This tactical deployment creates immediate operational consequences that cascade into strategic transformation. Saudi Arabia's naval presence forces Iran to disperse its own naval assets to counter multiple potential threats simultaneously. Iranian fast attack craft that previously concentrated near Hormuz must now defend against Saudi approaches from multiple vectors. This dispersal dilutes Iranian striking power while creating vulnerabilities Saudi intelligence can exploit. The Saudi deployment also provides protective coverage for increased tanker traffic through routes Iran previously intimidated. According to shipping data from Lloyd's List, oil tanker transits through the strait increased by 18% in the 2 weeks following Saudi naval positioning. Insurance rates for Gulf shipments dropped for the first time in 8 months. The economic signal is unmistakable. Markets are betting that Saudi Arabia can guarantee passage even against Iranian interference. This calculation fundamentally shifts the geopolitical equation. Iran's threat to close Hormuz derived its power from credibility that Saudi Arabia just systematically undermined. The strategic shift extends beyond immediate Gulf waters into regional alliance structures. Saudi Arabia coordinated its naval deployment with the United Arab Emirates, which simultaneously moved its own corvettes into supporting positions covering the eastern approaches to Hormuz. The Emirati vessels include Bainuna-class corvettes equipped with Exocet anti-ship missiles and sophisticated electronic warfare systems. The coordinated Gulf Cooperation Council naval presence creates overlapping fields of fire that complicate Iranian attack planning. According to analysis from the Center for Strategic and International Studies, Iran would need to commit its entire operational naval inventory to achieve temporary closure of the strait against combined Saudi and Emirati defenses. Such commitment would leave Iranian coastlines vulnerable to counterstrikes and risk catastrophic naval losses that Tehran cannot afford. The calculation has changed. What was once Iranian strength is now potential trap. But Saudi Arabia's move carries implications far beyond military geometry. The kingdom's willingness to directly challenge Iranian maritime dominance signals fundamental realignment in Middle Eastern power dynamics. For decades, Saudi Arabia pursued cautious policies designed to avoid direct military confrontation with Tehran. The kingdom relied on American security guarantees and diplomatic pressure rather than independent military action. That era just ended. According to Politico reporting citing Saudi government sources, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman personally authorized the naval deployment over objections from foreign ministry officials concerned about escalation risks. The decision reflects calculated assessment that American security commitments have become unreliable and that Saudi Arabia must develop independent deterrent capabilities. The neural deployment represents the first large-scale demonstration of this new strategic doctrine. The message targets not just Iran, but also Washington. Saudi Arabia will no longer calibrate its security policies to American preferences, but will act unilaterally to defend its interests. This brings us to the truly chilling dimension of Saudi Arabia's challenge to Iran. The naval deployment required intelligence capabilities that Saudi Arabia does not possess independently. The coordination, the timing, the precise positioning all suggest access to real-time Iranian communications intercepts and naval movement tracking beyond Saudi collection capabilities. According to Radio Free Europe reporters citing regional intelligence sources, Saudi Arabia received targeting data from Israeli satellite and signals intelligence systems. The intelligence sharing represents unprecedented cooperation between Riyadh and Jerusalem despite absence of formal diplomatic relations. Israeli surveillance assets monitored Iranian naval preparations weeks before the March 12 maneuvers, allowing Saudi forces to pre-position assets for rapid response. The Israeli contribution extended beyond passive intelligence to active electronic warfare support. According to German intelligence reports, Israeli units jammed Iranian naval communications during critical phases of the Saudi deployment, creating confusion that delayed Iranian countermeasures. This covert cooperation transforms regional dynamics. The emerging Saudi-Israeli axis creates combined military capability that dwarfs Iranian conventional forces, while maintaining deniability that prevents direct Iranian retaliation against Israel. The human dimension of this confrontation reveals the psychological pressure building within Iranian command structures. Iranian naval officers face impossible tactical dilemmas. Aggressive responses to Saudi positioning risk escalation into shooting war that Iran cannot win. passive acceptance signals weakness that undermines deterrence and emboldens further Saudi advances. According to leaked communications analyzed by open-source intelligence researchers, Iranian Revolutionary Guard naval commanders requested permission to conduct live-fire exercises near Saudi positions to demonstrate resolve. Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei personally denied the request, fearing accidental engagement that could spiral into broader conflict. This hesitation reveals the strategic paralysis gripping Tehran. Iranian leadership recognizes that military options have narrowed catastrophically, but acknowledges that backing down publicly would shatter the regime's carefully cultivated image of strength. The trapped feeling permeates Iranian strategic thinking. Revolutionary Guard commanders who built careers on threats to close Hormuz now watch impotently as Saudi Arabia systematically negates that capability. Individual Iranian sailors experience the pressure at human level. Intercepted communications show Revolutionary Guard fast attack boat crews expressing frustration at orders to maintain defensive postures while Saudi vessels operate with apparent impunity. One message captured by signals intelligence and verified by multiple sources shows Iranian crew members questioning why they cannot engage Saudi ships, violating what Iran considers its sphere of influence. The response from Iranian command was brutal in its honesty. Engagement would trigger retaliation Iran cannot absorb. The admission circulated quietly through Iranian naval ranks, eroding morale and confidence in leadership. These sailors enlisted believing they served an elite force capable of holding global energy supplies hostage. Now they watch Saudi vessels demonstrate that capability was always illusion sustained only by Western restraint rather than Iranian strength. The economic dimension amplifies the psychological impact. Iran's economy depends heavily on its ability to threaten oil disruption as leverage in negotiations over sanctions and nuclear program restrictions. Saudi Arabia's demonstration that Gulf states can guarantee shipping even against Iranian opposition eliminates that leverage. According to economic data from Iranian central bank reports, oil revenue projections for the second quarter of 2026 were revised downward by 12% following the Saudi naval deployment. The revision reflects market assessment that Iranian threats carry diminished credibility. International oil prices dropped $4 per barrel in the week after Saudi ships took position, signaling trader confidence in stable supply flows. Every dollar of price decline costs Iran approximately $500 million in annual revenue. The Saudi move just deleted $6 billion from Iranian budgets already strained by sanctions and corruption. The economic strangulation tightens the noose around a regime that requires external enemies and manufactured crises to maintain domestic control. China's role in enabling the Saudi deployment represents geopolitical earthquake whose aftershocks will reverberate for decades. Beijing historically maintained studied neutrality in Gulf conflicts, cultivating relations with both Saudi Arabia and Iran to ensure stable energy access. That neutrality just shattered. On March 10, 2026, just days before the Iranian naval maneuvers that triggered the crisis, China quietly announced completion of a massive oil pipeline from Pakistani ports through the Karakoram Mountains into western China. The China-Pakistan Energy Corridor provides Beijing with alternative oil import route completely bypassing the Strait of Hormuz. According to Chinese state media reports, the pipeline can transport up to 1 million barrels per day, representing nearly 20% of China's oil imports from the Gulf. The timing was not coincidental. China coordinated the pipeline announcement with Saudi Arabia to signal Beijing's reduced dependence on Hormuz passage. The message to Iran was devastating. China no longer requires Iranian goodwill to access Gulf energy. This shifts the entire foundation of Iranian strategic calculations. Iranian leadership had operated under assumption that Chinese economic interests would restrain Gulf states from confrontation that might disrupt shipping. The pipeline demolishes that assumption. China can now afford Saudi-Iranian conflict because Beijing's energy security no longer depends on Hormuz stability. According to analysis published in Defense News citing Chinese military sources, Beijing privately informed Tehran that Chinese naval vessels would not intervene should Saudi Arabia take action to open the strait by force. The abandonment represents catastrophic diplomatic defeat for Iran. The Shanghai Cooperation Organization, which Iran recently joined with expectations of Chinese support, will not provide security guarantees Tehran desperately needs. Iran stands alone facing an increasingly hostile regional environment with great power backing evaporating. The isolation is psychological as much as military. Iranian leaders who believed they had cultivated Chinese partnership discover they were merely convenient suppliers to be discarded when alternatives emerged. So what happens now? Saudi Arabia has demonstrated capability and willingness to challenge Iranian maritime dominance, but capability does not equal intention for permanent confrontation. The coming weeks will reveal whether Riyadh seeks negotiated resolution or permanent military posture change in the Gulf. Several scenarios present themselves, each carrying different implications for regional stability and global energy markets. In the short term, expect Saudi Arabia to maintain naval presence while offering Iran diplomatic off-ramp through quiet channels. The kingdom wants to establish new normal where Iranian threats carry no weight, but preferences achieving that without shooting war. Iran faces choice between accepting diminished influence gracefully or escalating through proxy forces in Yemen, Iraq, and Syria. Revolutionary Guard commanders who feel humiliated by Saudi naval deployment may pressure political leadership for asymmetric retaliation that restores perception of Iranian strength. Such retaliation could take form of attacks on Saudi oil infrastructure using Houthi drones and missiles launched from Yemen. According to intelligence assessments reviewed by the Associated Press, Iranian advisors in Yemen have increased weapons transfers to Houthi forces by 40% since mid-March, suggesting preparation for escalation. In the medium term, this confrontation may force Iran toward more desperate measures. If economic pressure from reduced oil leverage combines with domestic unrest over continued privation, Iranian leadership may conclude they have nothing left to lose. According to preliminary data from Iranian Interior Ministry documents leaked to opposition groups, unemployment among Iranians under 30 reached 32% in early 2026, the highest rate since the Islamic Revolution. Youth unemployment at these levels creates revolutionary conditions that terrify authoritarian regimes. Iranian leaders watching Saudi Arabia methodically dismantle their deterrent capabilities, while domestic pressure builds, may calculate that bold action offers better survival odds than slow strangulation. This could mean attempts to mine the strait, attacks on Saudi vessels, or even strikes on Saudi oil facilities using ballistic missiles. Such actions would trigger massive retaliation, but might appeal to regime facing collapse regardless. The long-term implications extend far beyond Gulf waters into fundamental questions about American influence and the emerging multipolar order. Saudi Arabia's independent action demonstrates that regional powers no longer wait for American permission or protection before pursuing their interests. The kingdom built the military capabilities, established the intelligence partnerships, and executed the deployment on its own timeline according to its own strategic logic. This represents death of the old Gulf security architecture, where the United States guaranteed stability in exchange for oil access and regional deference to American preferences. That model required American military presence and commitment that Washington no longer provides consistently. Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and other Gulf states are constructing alternative security frameworks based on indigenous capabilities and non-American partnerships. The Saudi-Israeli intelligence cooperation, the Chinese pipeline guarantee, the indigenous air defense networks all represent building blocks of new regional order, where American influence is optional rather than essential. This confrontation may determine not just who controls the Strait of Hormuz, but whether Iran can survive as unified state under current regime. The economic pressure, the military humiliation, the diplomatic isolation all compound to create existential crisis for a government that cannot reform without risking its own overthrow. Saudi Arabia appears to have concluded that regime change in Tehran serves Saudi interests and that methodical pressure offers more promising path than either appeasement or direct war. The naval deployment is first move in longer campaign to make Iran's position untenable. Whether that campaign succeeds depends on variables beyond Saudi control, including Iranian regime resilience, American policy evolution, and global economic conditions. But the direction is clear. Saudi Arabia is no longer waiting for Iran to change through sanctions or diplomacy. The kingdom is actively working to force that change through military pressure and strategic encirclement. The sparks of confrontation that started in the Strait of Hormuz could spread across the entire Middle East, igniting conflicts from Yemen to Syria as Iranian proxies retaliate and Saudi allies join the confrontation. We are witnessing the beginning of regional transformation, whose ultimate shape remains unclear, but whose violence appears increasingly inevitable. The slowly phase of Saudi-Iranian Cold War may be ending. The suddenly phase, where years of accumulated pressure explode into open conflict, may be much closer than anyone wants to admit. Only time will tell whether Saudi Arabia's brutal challenge to Iranian power produces the realignment Riyadh seeks, or the regional conflagration nobody can control. The coming months will be critical not just for Gulf security, but for global energy markets and great power competition in the world's most volatile region. What are your thoughts on Saudi Arabia's challenge to Iran? Do you think the kingdom can maintain its position without triggering wider war? Don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments section. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and like our video. The strait that Iran claimed to control is now the clearest picture of how quickly power shifts when capabilities meet determination, and how quickly yesterday's threats become today's empty gestures when rivals call the bluff. Presented by TGN, thank you for choosing us.